What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday, we got a pretty in-depth look at Nintendo's next big live service game, that being Splatoon 3. They went over a bunch of features for the multiplayer, as well as what's coming after the game comes out. We'll go over all that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Microsoft calling out Sony when it comes to the Activision Blizzard deal and how Sony's paying to keep games off of Game Pass. And we're also going to be going over a pretty big sale that is ongoing for physical copies of games with Gamefly, and even a quick look at the video card market, where if you held out for a new card, you might be in business here. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with PlayStation Plus games for the extra and premium tier for August, as we had some new titles that were announced. We can see this posted up over on PlayStation blog. Now, some of these were previously revealed to us, most of the Yakuza games. However, there's some other ones in here that will be heading to the service, that being extra and premium, starting August 16th. We have Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami 2, Dead by Daylight, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, Bugsnax, which went into PlayStation Plus when it had debuted on the PS5, but this just seems like a more, I guess, permanent home for it in extra and premium. And then there'll also be Metro Exodus, Trials of Mana, which I completely recommend Trials of Mana if you have not checked it out. That's a really cool action RPG. Uno, Monopoly Madness, and then Monopoly Plus. So not too bad here, especially if you haven't played any of the Yakuza games. Go ahead and fire up Yakuza 0 to get started with that one. But having Metro Exodus, Trials of Mana, some pretty good games to check out there. Now I'm curious what they have up their sleeve for the premium tier when it comes to retro games, because while there are some Yakuza games that are specific to it that probably will be dropping in here soon as well, I kind of think they might have a PS1 or PS2 game that they're going to reveal, and hopefully that's Legend of Dragoon, but I guess we'll see here soon. Also, there was a new trailer that was released for Forspoken from Square Enix. Didn't go over so well online. We can see this posted up by the official account on Twitter. A beautiful and cruel new land, twisted monsters, an array of magical abilities, sentient jewelry. Welcome to the world of Forspoken. The biggest thing around this trailer is the spoken dialogue is not great. It's kind of like that, I guess, that inner monologue voice, and it's sort of sarcastic and not taking things seriously, which sort of goes against the initial impression of this game. But I will at least say, this got people talking about the title, which is something that we haven't really been able to say much of outside of talking about it being delayed. So I don't know, is it saying any publicity is good publicity? I don't know. People were making parodies and stuff of this. So, hey, if Square was trying to get people to basically see this as a big joke for a game, I guess mission accomplished. Oh, and we had just talked about yesterday that all of a sudden these cloud icons were showing up next to games that weren't part of Game Pass, which seemed to signal the idea of Microsoft doing cloud streaming for games outside of Game Pass and maybe just games you own. Well, we have a response from Microsoft. We can see this over on Eurogamer. They had the quotation from a Microsoft spokesperson who says, "We're aware of a bug that incorrectly displayed some titles as available with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. We rolled out a fix, and this is now updated." There were a few other titles that were spotted, by the way, with Soul Hackers 2, GTA 5, and some others. But the big one that people were pointing out was Elden Ring. Obviously, it's Elden Ring. It's like the most popular game of the year at this point. But I still think this is something that Microsoft is looking to roll out by the end of this year. They already talked about this over the summer. I think it was in June. So it wouldn't shock me if Gamescom or maybe just a press release goes out later on this fall talking about it. And sure, they're calling it a bug right now, but something tells me it's just kind of lining up for that feature to go live. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Splatoon 3. About a 30-minute direct yesterday for it. They really went in-depth, specifically on the multiplayer side of things. We'll talk a little bit about the single-player stuff. But I noticed some of the reactions online were pretty positive, and then others were like, hey, this looks like Splatoon 2, which it's a sequel to Splatoon 2. I wasn't expecting them to change the core multiplayer for the game, but we'll get into that. There were a lot of things to go over here. I was trying to take as many notes as I could. I also found a pretty good summary on Nintendo Life that's like everything announced, and even that is like pages long, but I'll leave that a link down below in the sources. So we'll go over some of the things that I jotted down here, which starts with previous modes that are returning from Splatoon 2. It's basically the same modes. That's one of the big sticking points, is they didn't really have anything brand new here for the different modes. But some of the stages will also be returning from Splatoon 2. They do have a photo mode, which is great. You can take pictures, share them to social media like Twitter from your Switch. New movement options like Squid Surge that lets you climb up walls very fast, and even the ability to turn 180 degrees immediately while you're kind of jetting around there. There will be 12 stages at launch. Like I said, some returning, but we also have new stages, which includes Eel Tail Alley, Scorch Gorge, Mincemeat Metalworks, and Undertow Spillway. We have some new weapons, which includes Tri-Stinger, and the one that I really liked was the Splatana Wiper. Very clever, obviously, play on the katana, but it also throws paint everywhere. So that's one I think I'll be checking out there and using quite a bit. There's also 3 new amiibo, because why not? They'll be coming this winter time. Then we have new hosts to make game announcements. Like when you start up, you'd have different hosts that would tell you about what's changed. We have some new ones here. There'll be a Splatfest later this month on August 27th. It's themed around rock, paper, scissors. So you'll just be picking one of those to represent. I think I'm gonna go with the rock here, and it'll basically be a free demo that you get to try out. They have it timed as 9 a.m. Pacific to 9 p.m. Pacific time. So a lot of customization options that I noticed here for your character when you're going through the game and the multiplayer, always earning like this currency. They have 2 different currencies technically. One is for upgrading your weapons. The other one is for buying different shoes or clothes or stuff for your character. And they even show off lockers and splash tags. Lockers is the one that had quite a bit of conversation around it. Some wondering if it was even necessary because it doesn't really do anything. I disagree. I think having different ways to express yourselves in these live service games will just continue engagement going forward and always has you something to work towards. And I know it's fun to just have lockers that you can just put stuff in and people can just kind of passively come by and take a look inside of it. So just a fun way to kind of personalize the experience there. There will be a companion app for your phone, Splatnet 3. I assume this is where voice chat will be taking place as well, because Nintendo, but hey, I'm sure there'll be all kinds of extra things in there when it comes to your stats and even unlockables that they were describing. Table Turf Battle, it's a new game mode that includes collectible cards. Seemed like something you'd kind of battle against someone else, and still has the idea of taking up territory like in Splatoon, but it's sort of in this puzzle format where you have different cards that you lay down and just kind of shapes that you try to take up the board. So just again, an extra thing there that I assume you can just outright ignore, since it probably just deals with cosmetics once again in game. The lobby system seems significantly better than in Splatoon 2. Like, there's an area you go to where you have ghosts of your friends and you can join into their matches from there. Apparently you can even mess with them in their game that way. And there's like a training area where you guys can kind of play in until everyone's ready to party up and start running through some matches there. The entire match replay, all that's available. So when you go through a match, you can then look back on it and just go through a replay of the entire thing. And that's good, especially if Nintendo continues to lean into the competitive scene. That is a big feature for people who want to review maybe paths they're taking in the beginning or different strategies they can come up with. You can also leave drawings for others in Splatsville, which is always a risky move by Nintendo. We'll see how that does after the internet has a hold of that for about a week or so. Salmon Run returns is something we had seen previously, but they'll have some big bosses which look pretty cool, and there's also a big run mode that includes Splatsville being invaded. The one thing I didn't like about Salmon Run from Splatoon 2 is you had to schedule it out. Like, there were just times where it was active and other times where it was just closed, and it's like, I gotta schedule my games now for this. But anyway, from what they've shown there, hey, when it's open, looked kind of cool. There's 3-player Turf War, does 4v4, and then it goes into 4v2v2. They were trying their best to explain it, but I feel like that's one we're gonna have to play a couple of times to get the idea down, right? Going from 4v4 to 4v2v2, that'll be interesting. I mean, it looks fun, looks interesting. The story mode was probably the disappointing part here. It's a small segment of the Direct, and it appears to be similar to like Splatoon 2 and the expansion. They even mention hey, it's a good way to get the mechanics down and learn the different weapons. So unfortunately, doesn't look like it's any big revolutionary part for the game. There will also be post-launch content, 2 years worth, with new content drops happening every 3 months or so, and they've already announced large paid DLC, which that's always fun before the game is out to announce that, but there we are. And the online progress will be stored on Nintendo servers, which is another big plus here from Splatoon 2. I'm curious if that'll help to negate some of the issues we ran into with Splatoon 2, having like the leaderboards taken over and people just poking at Nintendo to fix it. So we'll see how Splatoon 3 is with that. To me, though, this just looked like Splatoon taken to the next level, which is kind of what I was expecting for the multiplayer side. They're not going to change the core concept much. I guess I was a little disappointed that it's basically the same modes. However, I assume they'll add modes, and we'll see, in post-launch with some of the content they'll be dropping there. And the single-player mode is just the one part that was, I think, kind of disappointing overall, as it appears to be more of an afterthought when it probably could have been something really, really cool. But hey, we'll see when it comes out. But otherwise, looks fun, looks like Splatoon. So I'll be checking out the Splatfest later on this month, and most likely picking the game up next month when it releases on September 9th. But let me know what you thought about Splatoon 3 with the Direct. Did it get you really excited for the game? Were you like, oh, it still looks kind of like Splatoon 2? Let me know. Next up, let's talk about some pretty big claims from Microsoft when it comes to Sony and some of their business practices. Remember, Sony talked about Call of Duty like it was this incredible franchise. It was unrivaled. It's so entrenched in the video game landscape that even if we had enough money, we couldn't create a competitor to it. It's that big. We rely on it that much. Basically, Sony was building it up, trying to at least put some thought into regulators around this deal going through for Activision and Blizzard going to Microsoft. And yeah, it was about exclusivity. So Microsoft decided to respond, talking about Sony's own business practices when it comes to exclusivity. We can see this posted up by The Verge. It says, Microsoft claims Sony pays for blocking rights to keep games off Xbox Game Pass. This was from Microsoft in an August 9th filing to the Administrative Council for Economic Defense. And it was translated from Portuguese, where they say Microsoft's ability to continue expanding Game Pass has been hampered by Sony's desire to inhibit such growth. Sony pays for blocking rights to prevent developers from adding content to Game Pass and other competing subscription services. Now, the idea to pay third parties for exclusivity isn't new. I mean, they may be publishing it. That could be something that's kind of thrown in there with contractual agreements, and that's why a game might not show up on another platform. But this is an interesting one because it's talking about Sony spending money to keep a game off of a subscription service like Game Pass. And I was looking back, see if we had any examples of this that maybe got out there. And there was one that I came across, and that was Resident Evil 8, Resident Evil Village. That appeared to have some unverified documents for Sony paying or having some clause in a contract with Capcom that it couldn't go to Game Pass. And yeah, that's gonna sting if you're on Game Pass and you're like, oh, that would have been really cool to have Resident Evil 8 go into the service that I already have. Well, there's a good chance that Sony paid so that you couldn't have it there, which of course doesn't really seem to have the consumer's best interest in mind. And that was something that Sony was mentioning, like, hey, this Game Pass stuff, it's going to lower the quality of our games, and that will in turn hurt consumers. Well, Microsoft's saying, hey, you guys are just keeping games off of Game Pass that consumers would probably like to have in the service. So it's again going back and forth over this Activision Blizzard deal. We already saw Microsoft say some really funny things about Activision and Call of Duty, saying they're not must-have games or anything, and they had to clarify that statement. And that's all. This is just the tug of war trying to get regulators going one way or the other. And you know what? I'm just ready for this deal to go through so we can move on from it, because I think most of us expect it to go through at this time, because the only company that really seems to have a problem with it right now is, shocker, Sony, where everyone else seems fine with it. So I think it's just going to be still several more months of this back and forth right now. It's just interesting because it's being made public in Brazil, and we're kind of seeing a back and forth we wouldn't normally, with both of these companies being pretty frank with each other, and there's a lot of redacted information. I'm sure at one point Final Fantasy VII Remake was brought up, and who knows, maybe RE Village is in there, and maybe a few other games that we didn't know could have been lined up for Game Pass that Sony paid to block. But let me know what you think about that, especially if you're a Game Pass subscriber. How do you feel about Sony potentially paying, well, millions of dollars to keep it off of there? And in our last bit of news, let's talk about some video game sales as well as video card sales, because we're getting pretty close to some of these newer cards or just current cards getting into that buy zone. Let's take a look here, though. This is Gamefly with a sale going on for physical copies of games. I like to point this out whenever I can, obviously building up that collection, because we see enough digital sales, so it's always interesting when you can actually order them and put them on your shelf. Let's start with the top here. PS5 titles includes Tiny Tina's Wonderland. That's going for $30. That's not bad. Remember, that was a $70 game when it first came out. I might actually pick that one up now. I think it's just about time. Ghostwire Tokyo at $23. And keep in mind, these games will come with the box, manual if you get one in the first place anyway, and everything. Elden Ring also is down there at $35. Moving over to the Nintendo Switch, we have some first-party games from Nintendo that are on sale, which includes Mario Strikers Battle League at $40, Nintendo Switch Sports at $35. I wonder if that comes with the leg strap or not. Then we have Pokemon Brilliant Diamond at $35, WarioWare Get It Together at $35. Moving over to the Xbox, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy at $13. Look at this, Battlefield 2042 down to $10. You know, it might be worth a $10 bill to check that game out now. Evil Dead the Game at $17.99. Grid Legends at $19.99. Call of Duty Vanguard at $19.99. And look, we even have WWE 2K22 at $24.99. But definitely check out Gamefly for their current sale going on. There's a lot of titles in there. And again, they're physical copies that you'll get in the mail and you can put up on your shelf. But I also want to talk a little bit about video cards, because Nvidia they're kind of struggling right now compared to last year, like many companies, but Nvidia was actually tied pretty heavily to the crypto market, considering a lot of their cards were being sold to miners who were paying a lot of money for them. They didn't care how much it was. They'd pay twice the retail value, and now that crypto's kind of crashed, Nvidia's left with seemingly a bunch of cards and a really tough hill to climb when it comes to the revenue they were generating last year, to where they're down 44% when it comes to the gaming side of things, which would be their video cards. And now, take a look over on Amazon. Well, look, here's a 3080. This is, again, from Amazon, brand new, $780. It's marked down from $930. In fact, if you go on eBay, some of the used cards are even cheaper, to where you can now get an RTX 3080 for less than MSRP. And you know what? I don't think it's done here. I think Nvidia is going to be working to announce their 4000 line here pretty soon. And when that happens, I think the 3000 cards are just going to continue to fall. So if you've been holding out, maybe you're sitting with a card that's a couple generations old now. I mean, in the next month or two, it might be time to buy. I'm just really happy to see that the cards have come down to a more reasonable price. It's still not how it used to be back in the day, where you could get a good card for like $200 to $300, but it's certainly better than where we were, where people were spending thousands of dollars for a 3080, now coming in at under $800. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, after seeing the Splatoon 3 Direct, are you picking it up next month? 21% said yes, I'm getting Splatoon 3 ASAP. 20% say yes, but maybe later after content starts being added or maybe a sale. And then 58% said, no, I'm not interested. Again, I think it's just going to be the way you see the game. I feel like people who are really into Splatoon are picking it up either way. Like, they probably didn't need this direct. They were like, hey, I really like Splatoon 2. I'm in it for Splatoon 3. But I understand if you're on the fence, expecting some big revolutionary change and you didn't really get it at that direct, you might be kind of hesitant to wait. But I did enjoy Splatoon 2 online, and I'm sure I'll be playing Splatoon 3 quite a bit as well when that releases next month. And hey, it'll give us a chance to get Evan involved again with the multiplayer game on the Switch. He played a lot of Splatoon 2. He's very good at it. He's going to, I'm sure, jump right into Splatoon 3, and that'll be a good way to wash away the disappointment of his last Switch purchase, which was Mario Strikers. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Nasir saying, I like unexpectedly getting trophies while not being aware of the task needed and just playing through a game, especially if it's not something to do with the main game. Yeah, I agree. That's actually the best unlockable, is when just an achievement or trophy pops and you didn't know you were getting one. Like, you were just going through the game normally and it's there and it shows up on the screen. that does have a certain feeling to it, doesn't it? There was one that I had the other day where I was playing Shredder's Revenge, and I was Casey Jones, the other person was Raphael, and you do the high five, and an achievement popped. I was like, what was that for? And you look at it and it's like, look, there's Raph and Casey getting along finally. It's like, oh, okay, that's a fun achievement to get there, a trophy. Whereas if you go through a trophy list and you're just going through and checking the boxes, it starts to feel a bit more like work and less like actually playing a game. So yeah, if a game can get the trophies lined up well enough to where, for the most part, you don't have to double back and do all kinds of stuff to get most of them, I think that's overall the best experience. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was your thoughts on Splatoon 3 after seeing that direct. Are you picking it up next month? And then also, what about Microsoft's claims that Sony is paying to block games going to Game Pass? And then the video card market appears to be declining when it comes to prices. Are you finally picking one up? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.